solution, which is why it went up. And this is use cognitive chat apps to leverage your team's DevOps Insights. I'm Dickson. I'm a data scientist / software developer at IBM. And this is basically just a case study of how my team created a Slack bot to do our annoying biz work for us. So a quick disclaimer that IBM makes me do. This talk only represents my personal opinions. It does not represent anything official in terms of positions, strategies, or opinions. This is just a story about what worked for my team, so please take it with a grain of salt. And a little bit of quick background. I work on the Data Insights squad in IBM. It's a squad whose mission is to provide tool usage and analytics for internal usage of agile tools. So what IBM's using GitHub, what do we know about them? Can we use that knowledge to predict other GitHub users? Stuff like that. And the problem was we kept getting repetitive questions from stakeholders. We were tasked with generating time-consuming reports each month. Tasks that could be automated were taking up a lot of precious bandwidth for innovation. Essentially, we didn't have time to answer those kind of cool questions that we were supposed to be answering. And the solution for us was Torch, which was a Slack bot that we created. Slack's widely used at IBM, and the integrated helper bot allows us to meet requests quicker without breaking out of your normal workflow. And Slack makes it pretty easy to make these kinds of tools, so they're relatively quick to put together. And this is how our specific one works. Initially, we had regexes that recognize the commands. Over time, we invested in improving it with Watson Conversation, which is an NLP service. So you can have more leeway with how you talk to it. And users can send commands through DMs or public channels. So the first thing that we applied Slack to were our chargebacks and unified dataset. My team's tasked with making monthly reports about specific tool usage so that financial teams can make appropriate licensing decisions. And we also have to create a monthly unified data set of tool usage for our own analytics. And before Torch, this involved a lot of really lengthy data pre-processing work that had to be done every time we wanted to do any of these. We ran notebooks to generate the reports, and we had to manually load the asset data. It took all of us working together, about a full afternoon to get that stuff done. And after Torch, we basically automated all of that. Torch can do the syncing of tables that we need. It can do some pre-processing work. You can actually make it run the reports, and it will deliver the results to you in a DM. And it takes about half the time and half the people working to do what we used to do with the entire team. And the second thing we applied Torch to were incident alerts. So we use AWS Lambda to run some of the more complex Python jobs that we have to do, such as getting GitHub usage numbers and creating the reports I just mentioned. But we aren't automatically notified when AWS Lambda fails, which was creating a few problems with our workflow. So before Torch, you have to manually comb the logs to find the errors. There was no alert when a function failed. It was really time consuming because you'd have these multi-process jobs that would just go silent and you weren't sure exactly where the problem was. because there is no error recorded. And after Torch, users can save time by being automatically notified if Torch notices a Lambda error. So it actually just adds the entire channel as soon as an invocation fails, so somebody has to respond to it just through public shaming. And if you're really worried about it, you can ask it how it's doing, and it will tell you if it's seen any errors. And the third thing we applied it to were stakeholder FAQs. So stakeholders, for us, often wanted to know how many people are using Agile tools, if they have a new chargeback report they can get. And everyone has stakeholders that are usually asking the same questions pretty often, and it was taking up a lot of our time. We would complete these requests, whenever they came in ad hoc, but it would really mess up our planning for the month. It would push our own work down in priority because you have to answer these questions. We had less time for innovation, and it just required a lot of repetitive manual work of finding the appropriate files, explaining them to the person who wanted them. And after Torch, we basically made Torch just respond to all of these frequently asked questions. So anyone can ask Torch for tool usage and receive a detailed answer in a couple seconds. And you can ask for the most recent available chargeback report and receive it in a DM. So nobody has to come to us directly with these requests. And the last thing that we used it for was updating CloudFormation stacks. So since we're a team who's trying to find analytics around internal tool usage, we really wanted to start ingesting GitHub event data. It offered a potential mine of stuff for us, but we were having a lot of trouble setting up that pipeline initially. And it was basically because we couldn't stream event data because we needed to be able to iterate really quickly on CloudFormation templates in order to provision the services that we would need, but we didn't have the bandwidth or the time to do that manually. So we were kind of stymied in building out this pipeline until we had Torch do it for us. So we just gave Torch the ability to update the stack. As long as there's a new file on GitHub, you can just ask Torch to sync it, and it will update the stack at will. And that made it possible for us to really start planning and building this streaming pipeline for event data. And overall, the benefits that we've noticed from using the Slack bot is we have more time to code. It does the really boring work for us. We've also particularly noticed that stakeholders really like it because they don't like coming to us with these repetitive questions either. They really just want the report, want whatever the numbers are. And one of the nice things about Slack is you can even kind of give it a cute personality. So ours is kind of mean if you ask it things that aren't related to work. But you can make it nice. It's up to you. And that's it.